The Steadfast was a small ship, and there was no avoiding the humans. Over the next 2 days, I studied them like a scientist studies strange animals. They were endlessly confusing. Their emotions changed like weather. One moment they were serious and focused. The next moment they were laughing at something foolish. They touched each other constantly, patting shoulders and shaking hands and embracing like they might never see each other again. Perhaps they would. Not. The ship's medic was a young woman named Megan Price. She was a corporal in the Marine Squad, trained both to heal and to fight. When my warriors were brought aboard, she was the one who treated their wounds. I watched her work on a Var soldier named Keth. He had burns across his chest and a broken arm. He said nothing as she examined him. He did not thank her. He barely looked at her, but Megan Price did not seem to care. She cleaned his wounds with gentle hands. She set his bone and wrapped his arm. She spoke to him softly, explaining what she was doing, even though he never responded. "You treat your enemies with kindness," I said to her afterward. "Why?" She looked up at me with surprise. "He's not my enemy. He's hurt. That's all that matters right now. The Varath have never been friends to humanity." "Maybe not," she said. "But he's on our ship, and he's in pain. That makes him my patient. And I take care of my patients." I did not understand this. On a Varath ship, enemy wounded were left to die or killed quickly. Resources were precious. Sentiment was waste. But these humans wasted sentiment everywhere. They could not help themselves. The ship's weapons officer was a quiet man named Victor Ruiz. He rarely spoke, but when he did, people listened. He spent most of his time at his station, running calculations and checking systems. He was methodical and precise, almost Vorath in his discipline, but even he showed the human weakness. I found him one evening in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. His hands were shaking slightly. "Lieutenant Ruiz," I said, "are you unwell?" He turned to face me. His eyes were tired. "Just thinking, Commander." "About what's coming? The battle?" "Yes." He paused. "I have a daughter back on Earth. She just turned 6. I promised her I'd be home for her birthday next month. You may not survive to keep that promise. I know." His voice was steady, but I could hear the pain beneath it. "That's what I'm thinking about. Does this fear not weaken you?" He considered the question. "No. It reminds me why I'm fighting. I'm not just defending a colony. I'm defending a universe where my daughter gets to grow up safe. That's worth dying for." I left him alone with his thoughts. His words stayed with me. The humans had something that drove them, something beyond duty and logic. They fought for people they loved. They fought for futures they might never see. They carried their fear like a weight, and somehow it made them stronger instead of weaker. I could not make sense of it. The communications officer was a young woman named Tessa Cole. I learned that she was the sergeant's younger sister. They had enlisted together, served together, and now they would likely die together. I asked Danny Cole about this one day. "Why would you bring your sister into danger?" He laughed. "I didn't bring her. She followed me. Tessa's stubborn like that. She said, if I was going to get myself killed, she wanted to be there to save me. That is foolish." "That's family," he said. "You don't leave family behind. Not ever. Family." The Varath had genetic lines and breeding programs, but nothing like what the humans described. We did not form these emotional bonds. We did not feel this need to protect each other beyond practical necessity. Looking at Danny and Tessa, I wondered if perhaps we had lost something important when we removed our emotions. On the 3rd day, the sensors detected a Sithrak scout patrol. 3 small ships, fast and deadly, moving to intercept us. Captain Bennett called the crew to battle stations. I watched from the bridge as the humans prepared to fight. They were afraid. I could see it clearly now. Their hearts beat faster. Their breathing grew shallow. Their hands trembled as they worked their controls, but not one of them hesitated. Not one of them froze. They moved with speed and purpose, each person doing their job without question. "Enemy ships closing," Victor Ruiz reported. His voice was calm, despite the fear in his eyes. "Weapons range in 2 minutes. All hands, prepare for combat," Bennett ordered. "Marines, stand by for possible boarding action." Danny Cole gathered his squad near the airlock. Megan Price was with them, her medical kit on her back and a rifle in her hands. They checked each other's armor, shared quick words of encouragement, and waited. The battle was brief but violent. The Sithrak scouts attacked in formation, firing streams of plasma at our hull. The Steadfast shook with each impact. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered, but the humans fought back hard. Ruiz scored direct hits on 2 enemy ships, crippling their engines. Bennett maneuvered the Steadfast with surprising skill, dodging fire and returning it with precision. Then the 3rd scout rammed us. The impact threw me against the wall. I heard metal tearing, atmosphere venting, people screaming. The Sithrak were boarding us. Their drones poured through the breach in the hull. They were insect-like creatures, all claws and teeth and mindless hunger. They existed only to kill and consume. Danny Cole met them head-on. I had never seen a human fight before. Not truly. I expected weakness, hesitation, fear turning to panic. Instead, I saw fury. Cole charged into the drones with his squad behind him. They fought like demons, firing and stabbing and kicking. When their weapons ran empty, they used their fists. When they fell, they got back up. Cole himself killed 6 drones before one of them slashed his arm open. Blood sprayed across the corridor. He did not stop. He did not slow down. He just switched his rifle to his other hand and kept shooting. One of the drones broke through the line and rushed toward my warrior. Keth, the Vorath, was still injured, too slow to defend himself. Cole saw it. Without hesitation, he threw himself between Keth and the drone. The creature's claws raked across his back, tearing through his armor. Cole screamed in pain but turned and shot the drone through its head. Then he fell to his knees, bleeding badly. Megan Price was there in seconds, pressing bandages to his wounds. "Stay with me, Danny. Stay with me. Did we get them all?" He gasped. "We got them." "It's over." He laughed. It was a weak sound, wet with blood. "Good. Couldn't let them hurt our guests." I stared at him. This human, this small and fragile creature, had nearly died to protect a Vorath warrior who had shown him nothing but contempt. "Why?" I asked. "Why would you risk your life for one of us?" Cole looked up at me. His face was pale from blood loss, but his eyes were still bright. "Because he's on my ship, and I protect the people on my ship. All of them." The medics carried him away to surgery. The crew began repairs on the hull. The battle was over, but something had changed in me. I returned to my quarters and sat in silence for a long time. My hands were shaking slightly. I did not know why. These humans were strange and foolish and weak. They felt fire constantly. They made decisions based on emotion instead of logic. They risked their lives for strangers and enemies alike, and yet they had just defeated a Sithrak boarding party with half the numbers and inferior weapons. They had fought with a ferocity I had never seen in any Vorath warrior. Perhaps, I thought, I had misjudged them. Perhaps fear was not the weakness I had always believed it to be. A message came through from the bridge. Captain Bennett's voice was tired but steady. "All hands, be advised. The Sithrak scout transmitted our position before we destroyed it. The main fleet knows where we are. We have 12 hours before they catch us. 12 hours to reach Varus 4. 12 hours before the real battle began." I looked out at the stars and felt something cold settle in my chest. It was unfamiliar, uncomfortable, I did not have a name for it, but I was beginning to suspect what it might be. My name is Kelver Tan, and I am Varth. For 300 years, my people have been the finest warriors in the galaxy. We are tall, strong, and disciplined. Our skin is thick like armor. Our eyes see in the dark. Our hearts beat slow and steady, even in the heat of battle. But the thing that makes us truly superior is simple. We do not feel fear. Long ago, our scientists found the part of our minds that created fear. They removed it. They called it a weakness, a defect, a disease of lesser species. Without fear, we became perfect soldiers. We never hesitated. We never ran. We never begged for mercy. I believe this made us the greatest warriors in the universe. I was wrong. The day my belief began to crack started with fire and death. My warship, the Crimson Mandate, was burning. The Sithrak Dominion had ambushed our fleet near the galactic fringe. The Sithrak were a hive-mind species, millions of drones controlled by a single intelligence. They felt nothing, wanted nothing, except to consume and expand. We had underestimated them. That was our mistake. 3 of our battleships were destroyed in the first wave. The rest scattered. My ship took heavy damage. The engines failed. Life support was failing. Of my crew of 200, only 7 warriors survived. We drifted in the cold silence of space, waiting for death. Then a signal came through the static. A ship was approaching. Not Sithrak. Not Vorath. The signal identified it as a human vessel. Humans. I knew little about them. They were a young species from a small world called Earth. They had joined the galactic community only a century ago. They were short, soft, and weak. They lived brief lives and spent much of that time on foolish emotions. They laughed. They cried. They loved and hated with equal passion. They were everything the Varth were not. The human ship was called the Steadfast. It was a small frigate, barely a third the size of my crippled warship. Its captain sent a message offering rescue and alliance. The Sithrak were hunting both our peoples, she said. We could help each other. I wanted to refuse. The thought of accepting help from such primitive creatures disgusted me. But my warriors were dying. My ship was dead. Pride would not save us. I accepted. The humans brought us aboard their vessel with surprising efficiency. Their medics treated our wounds. Their crew gave us food and quarters. They asked nothing in return except cooperation. The captain came to meet me personally. Her name was Lara Bennett. She was a woman in her middle years, with hair that was turning gray and eyes that were sharp and calm. She wore her uniform with quiet authority. When she spoke, her crew listened. She was small. I towered over her by nearly 2 feet. Yet she did not seem afraid of me. She looked at me like I was an equal. This annoyed me. Commander Tan, she said, welcome aboard the Steadfast. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. As do I replied. I thank you for the rescue, Captain. But I must ask why you would risk your ship for Vara strangers. She smiled. It was a strange expression, warm and genuine. Because you needed help. That's reason enough. I did not understand this answer. In Varth culture, help was given only when it served a purpose. There was always a cost, always an exchange. Humans apparently did not think this way. Captain Bennett explained the situation. The Sithrak were moving toward a human colony world called Verisfor. 40,000 civilians lived there. The colony had almost no defenses. If the Sithrak reached it before warning came, everyone would die. The Steadfast was racing to warn them. But the Sithrak were faster. Bennett needed every warrior she could find. Will you fight with us? She asked. I considered her offer. Fighting alongside humans felt beneath my dignity. But the Sithrak were a threat to my people as well, and I had a debt to repay. My warriors will fight, I said, but do not expect us to follow your orders. The Vorath answered to no one. Bennett nodded. Fair enough. Just point your weapons at the enemy, and we'll get along fine. Over the next several hours, I observed the human crew. What I saw confused me deeply. They were afraid. I could see it in their eyes, in the way they moved, in the tension of their voices. They knew they were flying toward almost certain death. The Sithrak fleet was vast, and they were one small ship, yet they did not flee. They did not despair. Instead, they did something I had never seen before. They laughed. A young sergeant named Danny Cole was the worst of them. He was the leader of the ship's Marine squad, a man barely 30 years old with a quick smile and quicker tongue. He told jokes to his soldiers. He teased them about their fears. He made them laugh even as they prepared for battle. I watched him gather his squad in the cargo bay. They were checking weapons, loading ammunition, running combat drills. And through it all, Cole kept talking, kept joking, kept grinning like a fool. Hey, Martinez, he called to one of his soldiers. Remember that bar fight on Station 12? You were scared of that drunk trader who was half your size. The soldier laughed. He had a knife. It was a fork, Cole said. A dinner fork. And you screamed like a child. The whole squad erupted in laughter. Even the nervous ones relaxed a little. I approached Cole after the drill ended. Sergeant, why do you make jokes when death approaches? He looked up at me without fear. Because scared people make mistakes, Commander. Laughing helps them relax. And relaxed soldiers fight better. You are afraid, I said. It was not a question. Terrified, he admitted. But that's just part of the job. You feel the fear. You acknowledge it. And then you do what needs doing anyway. I stared at him. This made no sense to me. Fear was supposed to paralyze, to weaken, to destroy. How could these creatures function while carrying such a burden? Cole seemed to read my confusion. He smiled again, that strange human expression. You Vorath don't feel fear, right? That's what I heard. Correct. We removed it from our species long ago. He nodded slowly. Must be nice. But I wonder, if you can't feel afraid, how do you know when something really matters? I had no answer for him. That night, as the Steadfast raced through hostile space toward Varus 4, I stood alone in my quarters and thought about his words. Fear as a signal. Fear as meaning. It was a foolish idea from a foolish species, and yet I could not stop thinking about it. Through the viewport, I watched the stars blur past. Somewhere ahead, the Sithrak were waiting. Behind me, I could hear the humans laughing in the mess hall, sharing meals and stories as if tomorrow was not going to be their last day. What kind of species smiles in the face of death? I did not know, but I was beginning to wonder if perhaps they knew something that we Vorath did not. The sky turned black with Sithrak ships. They came like a storm, blocking out the sun, filling the horizon with their terrible shapes. The colony's warning sirens screamed. People ran for cover. Children cried in their mothers' arms, and then the battle began. The Steadfast led the defense, climbing to meet the enemy fleet head-on. Victor Ruiz fired everything we had, missiles and plasma cannons and railguns, pouring destruction into the Sithrak formation. 3 enemy ships exploded in the first minute. Then 5, then 10, but more kept coming. Always more. Hull breach on deck 4. Someone shouted. Shields at 40%. Keep firing, Captain Bennett ordered. Her voice was calm, steady, unbreakable. Every second we hold them is another transport that gets away. I watched from the bridge as our small fleet fought against impossible odds. The patrol craft darted between enemy ships, drawing fire and dying one by one. The ground batteries sent beams of light into the sky, taking down dropships before they could land. but it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. The Sithrak broke through our line and began landing troops on the surface. Thousands of drones poured out of their dropships, flooding across the fields toward the evacuation zones. "Ground teams, they're coming your way," Tessa Cole announced over the radio. Her voice was tight with fear, but she kept working, kept coordinating, kept guiding the transports to safety. Danny Cole's voice crackled back. "Copy that. We see them. All units, defensive positions. Hold the line." I grabbed a rifle and headed for the shuttle bay. Captain Bennett saw me leaving. "Commander, where are you going?" "To the surface," I said. "Your Marines need reinforcements." She nodded. "Good luck, Kelver. Luck is a human concept." "Then fight well." I boarded a shuttle with my 7 warriors and dropped toward the chaos below. What I saw when we landed will stay with me forever. The colonists were fighting. Not just the soldiers, not just the volunteers. Everyone who could hold a weapon was standing against the Sithrak tide. I saw a farmer firing a hunting rifle from behind his tractor. I saw a teacher swinging a metal pipe at a drone that tried to grab her students. I saw an old man in a wheelchair using a shotgun to protect his neighbors. They were all afraid. I could see it in every face, every movement, every scream. But they did not run. They stood their ground and fought for their families, their homes, their world. I had never seen anything like it. My warriors, and I pushed toward the main defense line. Danny Cole was there, his arms still bandaged, his face covered in dirt and blood. He grinned when he saw me. "Commander, glad you could join the party." "This is not a party," I said. "This is a slaughter." "Then let's make sure they pay for every inch." We fought side by side, human and Vorth, shoulder to shoulder against the endless swarm. The drones kept coming, wave after wave, and we kept killing them. My rifle grew hot in my hands. My muscles burned with exhaustion. But I did not stop, I could not stop, because something had changed inside me. The tightness in my chest had become a fire. The trembling in my hands had become energy. Every time a drone fell, I felt a fierce satisfaction. Every time a transport lifted off towards safety, I felt a desperate hope. I was feeling. For the first time in my life, I was truly feeling. And I understood now why the humans were so strong. Their emotions were not weakness. They were fuel. They burned with passion and love and fear, and that burning made them fight harder than any cold, logical warrior ever could. Megan Price was moving through the battle, dragging wounded to safety. I saw her take a plasma bolt to the shoulder. She cried out in pain, stumbled, and kept going. She grabbed a fallen colonist and pulled him behind cover, then started treating his wounds even as blood ran down her own arm. "Price!" Cole shouted. "Get to cover!" After I stopped his bleeding, she shouted back. Victor Ruiz had come down from the Steadfast when the ship became too damaged to fly. He was directing fire teams, coordinating defenses, making every shot count. When a group of drones tried to flank our position, he stepped into their path alone and held them off, until reinforcements arrived. I saw him take 3 wounds before he finally fell. Even then, he kept shooting until the drones were dead. Tessa Cole never left her post. The communications center was hit twice by enemy fire. The ceiling collapsed around her. She was bleeding from a cut on her head, coughing from the smoke and dust. But she kept talking, kept guiding, kept saving lives one transmission at a time. Transport 7, you are clear for launch. Transport 8, adjust your heading by 2 degrees. Transport 9, hold position. There are drones in your flight path. Ground teams, clear a corridor for Transport 9, Priority 1. Her voice was the thread that held everything together. As long as she kept talking, the evacuation kept moving. The battle raged for hours. The sun crossed the sky and began to set. painting the clouds red and orange. The transports kept lifting off, one by one, carrying survivors to safety. But we were losing. The defense line was shrinking. Too many dead, too many wounded, too few left to fight. The Sithrak were pushing us back toward the final evacuation zone. Danny Cole and I ended up defending a narrow street that led to the landing pads. If the drones broke through here, they would reach the remaining transports. Thousands of lives depended on us holding this position. Cole was in bad shape. His old wounds had reopened. New wounds covered his body. He could barely stand, leaning against a wall for support. But he kept his rifle raised, kept watching for targets, kept fighting. "We should fall back," I said. "Regroup with the others." "Can't," he gasped. "If we give up this position, they'll overrun the landing zone. The transports won't make it. Then we will die here. Probably." He laughed. It was a weak, painful sound. "But those kids on the transports will live. That's what matters." The drones came again. A dozen of them, then 2 dozen, then more than I could count. Cole and I fired until our weapons were empty, then drew our blades and fought hand to hand. I killed more drones than I could count. Cole fought beside me, his movements slow and clumsy from blood loss, but his spirit unbroken. Then one of the drones slipped past me and slashed Cole across the chest. He fell hard, his blood pooling on the ground. "Cole!" I knelt beside him, trying to stop the bleeding. His eyes were glazing over. His breath came in short, wet gasps. "Did we hold them?" He whispered. I looked up. More drones were coming. The position was lost. We had failed. "No," I said. "They are breaking through." He closed his eyes. For a moment, I thought he was dead. Then he opened them again and smiled. "Then help me up. I'm not done yet. You will die. Yeah, but not lying down." I lifted him to his feet. He swayed, nearly collapsed, but stayed upright through sheer willpower. He raised his empty rifle like a club. The drones surrounded us. There was no escape. No hope. No chance of survival. I stood beside Danny Cole in that final moment and felt fear wash over me like a wave. Real fear. True fear. The kind that Devarth had erased from our bloodline centuries ago. It was cold and sharp and overwhelming. It told me that I was about to die, that everything I was would end in this place, that the universe would continue without me. And yet I did not run. I stayed beside this human, this small and fragile creature who had shown me what courage truly meant. I stayed because he had stayed for me. I stayed because some things mattered more than survival. I stayed because I finally understood. Fear was not weakness. Fear was love. Fear was the knowledge that you had something worth losing. And courage was choosing to fight anyway. The drones charged. We raised our weapons, and the sky exploded with light. The light came from above. I looked up and saw ships dropping out of hyperspace. Dozens of them, then hundreds, filling the sky with their massive shapes. For one terrible moment, I thought they were more Sithrak. Then I recognized the markings on their hulls. VOR8. The Varth fleet had come. Later, I would learn that my distress signal had reached the High Command. They had dispatched a full battle armada to investigate. By chance or fate, they had arrived at Varus 4 at the moment of our greatest need. The Sithrak fleet never stood a chance. Varth warships tore through the enemy formation like fire through dry grass. The hive mind tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. Within an hour, every Sithrak ship was destroyed. Within 2 hours, the remaining drones on the surface were hunted down and eliminated. The colony was saved. I watched from the ground as the battle ended. Danny Cole was unconscious beside me, his life preserved by the timely arrival of rescue teams. Megan Price was carried to a medical shuttle, still trying to give instructions to the medics treating her. Victor Ruiz was found alive under the rubble of the command center, badly wounded but breathing. Tessa Cole had never stopped talking. Even after the Varth arrived, she kept coordinating, kept guiding, kept working until the last transport was safely away. Then she collapsed at her station, exhausted beyond words. They had done the impossible. One small frigate, a handful of patrol craft, and a few thousand brave souls had held off an entire Sithrak fleet long enough to save 23,000 lives. 23,000. More than half the colony had escaped. Children who would grow up to have children of their own. Families who would rebuild. Lives that would continue because humans had been willing to die for them. I thought about what that meant. I thought about the coast. Captain Laura Bennett was dead. She had stayed on the Steadfast until the end, fighting to keep the ship in the battle, even as it burned around her. When the reactor finally failed, she ordered her surviving crew to abandon ship. She stayed behind to make sure they got away. The last transmission from the Steadfast was her voice, calm and steady despite everything. All hands clear. It's been an honor serving with you. Bennett out. Then the ship exploded, and Laura Bennett was gone. I stood at the edge of the crater where the Steadfast had fallen. The metal was still hot, still smoking. There was nothing left to bury. Danny Cole limped up beside me. He had refused to stay in the medical bay, demanded to see where his captain had died. His face was pale from blood loss, but his eyes were clear. "She saved us," he said quietly. "She saved all of us." "Yes," I replied. "She did." We stood in silence for a long time. The sun was rising over the colony, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. It was beautiful. Life continued. "Commander," Cole said eventually, "can I ask you something?" "Yes, back there, at the end. You stayed with me. You could have run, but you didn't. Why?" I thought about the question. 3 days ago, I would have said that retreat was logical, that survival was the highest priority, that dying for strangers was foolish and wasteful. But I was not the same Vorath I had been 3 days ago. "Because you stayed for me," I said. "Because you protected my warrior when you had no reason to. Because you showed me that some things matter more than survival." Cole nodded slowly. "You were scared. I saw it in your eyes. The great Vorath commander, finally feeling fear." "Yes," I admitted. "I was terrified. I still do not fully understand the sensation. It was overwhelming and painful, and I wanted it to stop. But you didn't run." "No, I did not run." He smiled, that strange human expression that I was beginning to understand. "That's bravery, Commander. That's what it means to be brave. Not being fearless. Being scared out of your mind and doing the right thing anyway. The Vorath do not believe in bravery. We believe in efficiency, logic, cold calculation. And how's that working out for you?" I looked at the sunrise. I thought about my people, our empty hearts, our perfect discipline, our complete lack of anything worth dying for. "Not well," I said. "Not well at all." 2 weeks later, I stood before the Vorath High Command to deliver my report. The council chamber was vast and cold, filled with warriors who had never known fear. They sat in perfect silence, their faces expressionless, waiting for me to speak. I had prepared a standard report. Ship lost, crew dead, mission completed. It was the kind of report they expected, the kind that fit neatly into their understanding of the universe. Instead, I told them the truth. "I have witnessed something that changes everything we believe about ourselves," I began. "I have fought beside humans. I have watched them sacrifice their lives for strangers. I have seen small, fragile creatures stand against impossible odds because they loved something more than they feared death." The council stirred. This was not what they wanted to hear. "We bred fear out of ourselves and called it strength," I continued. We eliminated emotion and called it evolution. We became perfect warriors who fight without hesitation, without passion, without meaning. Commander Tan, one of the council members, interrupted. What is the point of this? The point is that we were wrong. We are not the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We are not even close. Silence. The kind of silence that comes before violence. I have felt fear, I said. For the first time in my life, I have felt the cold grip of terror, the awareness of death, the desperate need to protect something beyond myself. And in that moment of fear, I was stronger than I have ever been. Fear is weakness, the council leader stated flatly. No, I replied. Fear is love. Fear is the knowledge that something matters. Without fear, there can be no courage. Without courage, there can be no true strength. The humans taught me this. They taught me that feeling. Afraid and choosing to fight anyway is worth more than 1,000 battles fought without feeling anything at all. I stepped forward and placed my insignia of rank on the council table. I request permanent assignment as a liaison to human forces. I have found something worth protecting. Not just my people, but the bond that was forged in battle. If the Varath wish to become truly strong, we must learn from humanity. We must learn to feel. The council stared at me like I had lost my mind. Perhaps I had. Perhaps fear had broken something inside me that could never be fixed. Or perhaps it had fixed something that had been broken for 300 years. I left the council chamber without waiting for their answer. I did not care what they decided. My path was clear. 1 month later, I boarded a human vessel at the edge of Varath space. The ship was called the Resilient. It was a new frigate, built to replace the Steadfast, crewed by survivors of the Battle of VERI-4. Danny Cole was there to greet me. He had been promoted to captain. His sister Tessa stood beside him, now serving as his first officer. Megan Price was the chief medical officer. Victor Ruiz had retired from combat duty, but had agreed to train the new weapons crews. They welcomed me like family. Commander Tan, Cole said, grinning. Ready to feel afraid again? I looked at the faces around me. Humans, all of them. Small, fragile creatures who burned with emotions that the Varath had abandoned long ago. They had lost their captain, their ship, their friends. They had every reason to despair. Instead, they were laughing. They were hugging. They were already planning their next mission. Yes, I said. I am ready. Cole clasped my arm in the human gesture of friendship. Welcome aboard, Kelver. Let's go see what kind of trouble we can get into. The ship lifted off and turned toward the stars. Somewhere out there, new dangers waited. New battles to fight. New moments of terror and hope and desperate courage. I had once believed that the Varath were the greatest warriors in the galaxy because we did not feel fear. I know better now. Greatest warriors are not fearless. The greatest warriors are afraid, deeply and terribly afraid, and they fight anyway. They fight for love, for family, for futures they might never see. They fight because fear tells them something matters. And that is worth more than all the cold perfection in the universe. Fear touched me at last when I fought shoulder to shoulder with humanity. And in that moment, I finally understood what it meant to be truly alive. We reached Varus 4 with 3 hours to spare. The planet was beautiful from orbit. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds drifting across a peaceful sky. It looked like a paradise, untouched by the horrors of war. 40,000 humans lived down there. Farmers, teachers, children, families. They had built homes and planted crops and created lives for themselves on this distant world. They did not know that death was coming for them. Captain Bennett opened communications with the colony immediately. I stood on the bridge and watched as the governor's face appeared on the screen. He was an older man with kind eyes and a worried expression. "Captain Bennett, we received your warning," he said. "But we have a problem. Our transport ships can only evacuate 20,000 people. We don't have enough room for everyone. How long until your transports are loaded?" 6 hours at minimum. Bennett closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her face was calm but hard. "Governor, you have 3 hours. Load as many as you can. We'll hold the line until you're clear." The governor's voice cracked. "Captain, you have 1 frigate. The Sithric have dozens of ships. You can't possibly." "We'll hold the line," Bennett repeated. "Get your people to safety. That's an order." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. No one spoke. They all knew what she was asking. They all knew they were going to die. I expected despair. I expected tears, arguments, people demanding to flee. That is what logic dictated. When faced with certain death, survival instinct should override all else. But these were humans. They did not follow logic. Danny Cole was the first to speak. He had just come from the medical bay, his wounds bandaged and his arm in a sling. He should have been resting. Instead, he stood at attention. "Captain, my Marines are ready. We'll deploy to the surface and help coordinate ground defense." "Danny, you're injured." "I can still shoot, ma'am. And those colonists are going to need every gun they can get." Megan Price stepped forward. "I'll go with him. They'll need medics down there." Victor Ruiz raised his hand. "I'm staying at my station. Someone needs to make those Sithric ships bleed before they reach the colony." Tessa Cole nodded. "Communications will stay active until the last transport is clear. I'll guide them out personally." One by one, every member of the crew volunteered to stay. Not one asked to leave. Not one tried to escape. I could not believe what I was seeing. "You are all going to die," I said. The words came out before I could stop them. "You know this. Why do you not flee while you still can?" Captain Bennett looked at me. Her eyes were steady and sad and somehow peaceful. "Because those are our people down there, Commander. 40,000 souls who are counting on us to give them a chance. If we run, they all die. If we stay, some of them might live. That's a trade I'm willing to make. But you will lose everything." "No," she said softly. "I'll lose my life. That's not the same as everything. Everything is down there on that planet. Everything is in the faces of those children who deserve a future. If my death can buy them that future, then my life meant something." She turned away from me and began issuing orders. The crew moved to obey without question. I stood frozen in place, trying to process what I had just witnessed. The Vorath did not think this way. We valued survival above all else. A dead warrior serves no purpose. Sacrifice without tactical advantage was considered foolish, wasteful, weak. But these humans did not see sacrifice as waste. They saw it as meaning. They were willing to die not because they did not fear death, but because they loved something more than they feared it. I thought of my own people. We had removed fear from our hearts, and in doing so, we had removed something else as well. We had no families. We had no bonds. We had nothing we loved enough to die for. The humans had everything. I found myself walking to the armory. My surviving warriors were there, checking their weapons. They looked at me with expectation. "Commander," said Keth, "what are your orders? Do we evacuate with the transports?" I thought about the question. We had no obligation to these humans. Our debt was paid. We could leave now and no one would blame us. But I remembered Danny Cole throwing himself in front of a Sithrak, drone to save this very warrior. I remembered Megan Price treating our wounds with gentle hands. I remembered Captain Bennett offering us shelter when she had every reason to leave us to die. "No," I said. We fight. Kath stared at me. Commander, that is not logical. We gain nothing from dying here. We gain honor, I replied. Something we have not had for a very long time. I left them to prepare and walked to the observation deck. Below us, the colony was in chaos. People were running toward the landing zones, carrying children and belongings, trying to reach the transports in time. And among them, I saw something that stopped my breath. Volunteers were stepping out of the evacuation lines. Not soldiers, not warriors, just ordinary people. Farmers picked up hunting rifles. Teachers strapped on armor, borrowed from the colonial militia. Elderly men and women took positions at defensive barriers. They were choosing to stay. A posh, young woman with a small child handed the child to an older woman who was boarding a transport. The young woman kissed the child's forehead, then turned and walked toward the defense line. She was leaving her child to die for strangers. No, not for strangers. For all of them. For the idea that some things mattered more than individual survival. For the belief that a mother's sacrifice might save someone else's child. My chest felt tight. My hands were trembling. Something was building inside me, something I had never felt before. It was uncomfortable and overwhelming, and I did not have a name for it. Captain Bennett's voice came over the intercom. All hands, the Stithrek fleet has entered the system. 47 ships detected. Time to contact, 90 minutes. 47 ships. We had 1 damaged frigate, 5 patrol craft, and a handful of ground batteries. This was not a battle. This was an execution. And yet the humans did not stop. They did not give up. They kept working, kept preparing, kept fighting even before the first shot was fired. I went to find Bennett. She was on the bridge, studying tactical displays and issuing commands. When she saw me, she nodded. Commander Tan, have you decided what you're going to do? My warriors will fight beside you, I said. We will defend this colony as if it were our own. She smiled. That strange human expression, warm and genuine despite everything. Thank you, Kelver. It means a lot. May I ask you something, Captain? Of course. Are you not afraid? Her smile faded slightly. She was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars where death was approaching. I'm terrified, she admitted. I've never been more scared in my life. But fear isn't the enemy, Commander. Fear is just a signal. It tells you that something matters. And right now, those people matter more than my fear. She reached out and put her hand on my arm. It was a strange gesture, intimate and comforting. Fear is what makes courage possible, she said. Without fear, bravery is just instinct. With fear, bravery becomes a choice. And choices are what define us. The Sithrak fleet appeared on the sensors. Dozens of ships spreading out like a swarm of insects, moving toward the colony with cold, mindless purpose. I took my place beside the humans and prepared to fight, but my hands were still trembling. The tightness in my chest had not gone away. For the first time in my life, I was beginning to understand what fear felt like, and I was beginning to understand why the humans were so strong.